I always cringe when I go into a hardware store and I see their traps set out. And it's, you know, the reason is because, you know, there's so many people that go to the hardware store for all kinds of stuff, you know, who knows what. And they'll see traps and think, oh yeah, you know, I've got coyotes. I like to catch some coyotes. I got a fox. I might, you know, pick up a couple of those and try them out. The problem is that hardware stores don't carry anything else usually other than the traps, and so it gets people started off on the wrong foot because they think a trap is all you need, and it's really not all you need. You know, there's so much more stuff that goes into it, but you know, specifically the trap itself is just usually what you're looking at is Duke traps. Nothing against Duke traps, but Duke traps are cheap. It's generally, you know, the cheapest trap there is out there, and when you compare them to something like an MB550, it's hands down, there's no comparison. So if there's anybody at all that's even semi-serious about wanting to trap, a hardware store is not the place to get your traps. Number one, because they're cheap traps and it's not the best trap for the scenario usually that you're looking at. And number two, they don't have all the stuff that you need. Dye, wax, anchors, lures. You can see here, this is the video that I took at our hardware store where I got the Duke trap, and all you see is traps. There are no other trapping supplies, no anchors, no dye, so you don't have any of the other essential things you need to get started trapping. Number three, usually they're overpriced. Now, I picked up this Duke trap at our local hardware store here, paid $15 for it. This is a Duke number 2 trap. I looked them up online. You can get it from a trap and supply place for less than $10. Now I know you got shipping and stuff like that in there, but you know, if you look at, if you're semi-serious, one trap's not going to get you very far. You need traps, and you know, preferably a dozen. You know, dozen's a good round number to start out trapping with. That gives you enough to set 2 traps at a location and cover a serious amount of ground. One trap, you can set that behind your backyard, in your backyard, but that's about it. That's about all it's good for. So, but here I'm going to give you a head-to-head comparison of why a MB550 is a superior coyote trap to a Duke number 2. Here's your traps. You get your MB550 and your number 2 Duke. And just looking at them, I mean, this MB550 has cast jaws. It's just a stouter overall looking trap. It's got cast jaws, thick jaws. It's got a base plate on it, whereas you're just looking at standard width jaws, no base plate. And the base plate is to give this trap strength. You catch a coyote and he starts pulling and jerking on this thing, you know, it's not unheard of for this trap frame to bend. And especially if it's just a thin frame like that, just a single layer, there's a good chance it'll bend. That poses a couple of problems, and it gives you another benefit to the MB550. If you look and see your jaws here, when they come through the trap frame, they got these little ears on them to help them not be popped out of the holes where they come through the trap. Your number 2 Duke, and this is not, I'm not picking on Dukes, a lot of just factory traps, Sleepy Creek, Bridgers, a lot of them have these same features. So this is, I would say, in general, hardware store traps. These ends aren't bent, so if your frame starts bending and these are flexing, there is a chance that these jaws, one of them will pop out of the frame. You lose your animal. Alright, so that's obviously not preferable. You've got just a single width jaw versus these MB550s is a thicker jaw, which gives the effect of a lamination. So it's twice the thickness of this jaw, and it's also offset. And all that's for the animal's benefit, right? So it increases the area that's in contact with the animal's foot, and then your offset gives you a little gap to make sure that you get blood flow to that foot. Another thing, if you look at them and you're looking at the base of them, you can see MB550 is center swiveled. This number 2 Duke is side swiveled. The biggest feature of that is if an animal's trapped in this MB550 and he gets caught kind of off here to the side, as he's pulling, he stays consistently pulling against the center of the trap. so his foot's not going to slide. Well, an animal gets caught in this trap, and he gets caught on this side, and he's pulling against this side of the trap, there's a possibility for his foot to slide. So that's goes back to a benefit to the animal of having your trap center swiveled, and that's really bigger animals like coyotes. Is, you know, a coon or something like that, it's not as big of a deal to have it center swiveled. But when you're talking about a hard fighting animal like a coyote, you want that thing beefed up as much as possible. And speaking of beefed up, you've got your dog here. That is a round dog. It's a short dog, which means it's less likely to bend. It will still bend, but it's not as likely as this trap, which is just a straight flat dog. That's not a heavy duty dog. There's more likelihood of this getting bent sooner than this one. You've also got the feature that's already built in of the night latch on your MB550. So when you set this trap, you get it set and you start to pull the pan down to get it set where you're ready to put it in the ground, and you hear that click. That's the night latch. The idea is that if you're setting them at night, you can hear it click and you know that it's ready to go. So that's just really more of a convenience thing, but it's a huge convenience. It tells you that that trap is ready to go, and you don't have to worry about adjusting it or eyeballing it. With these traps, they don't have the night latch, and you can also see sometimes these dogs will be rounded on the tip, and then usually this pan notch is rounded as well. So you're not as likely to get a crisp, clean fire. There's liable to be some creep in your fire, and there's also nothing telling you that that pan is level, this trap is ready to go. So you got to look at it as you're setting it and try to eyeball and figure out where exactly you need to stop before the trap fires. There's a couple, you know, you can do modifications to these which will make it a little bit easier, but there again, that's more work you got to do versus this that's already done for you. Another feature that's to me one of the major features is your chain. You look at this MB550, that's stout chain. Not to mention you've got heavy duty crunch proof swivels. Believe it or not, coyotes, you know, they can bite down on this swivel, not these crunch proof ones, but they bite down on a standard swivel like this, they'll take your swivel action right away. You don't want that. So these crunch proof swivels are heavy duty. You got two of them that's ready to set, ready to put an anchor on. It's also got this heavy duty chain. You ain't got to worry about this chain breaking or anything like that. You look at these hardware store traps, you got swing chain on there. Now, they've been putting swing chain on there for years. There's lots of people caught coyotes with them. But, you know, when I buy traps, I'm aiming to keep them, use them for a lifetime, you know. So, I want something that's going to last and I'm not going to have to worry about. You've also only got one swivel point here versus you've got two swivel points here. And then you've got just a standard run-of-the-mill swivel on the end that can definitely be crunched by a coyote to take away your swiveling action. So there's all your comparisons, your initial, you know, easy to look at, easy to notice comparisons of a hardware store trap versus a good quality trap purchased from a trap and supply dealer. And you know, there again, you go back to, you buy this trap by the single, you buy these traps, you can buy them by the single from trap and supply places, but you get a break if you buy them by the half dozen or dozen. If you're going to be even semi-serious, you need at least a dozen traps. So there you have it, cost savings and a lot more benefits, a lot stouter and more well-made trap with your trap and supply trap MB550 versus, you know, a hardware store #2 size trap.